Now we have 25 or so minutes to chat about the use of agents in legal and finance. So maybe just to start, when you think about generic agents, maybe your voice is tired, so we'll start with Nikhil. When you think about agents and applying them to these higher risk areas like finance and transactions or legal, what are the difference in requirements between those agents and agents for other use cases?
Yeah, thank you. Look, all finance and legal organizations that I know of today are already using agents in some fashion because they're using coding agents. And coding agents have this amazing property around like verifiability and testability. Like you can go in, read the code, you can decide like if it is too verbose, not verbose enough, has like design docs, doesn't have design docs, all of that stuff like associated with it. And you can run a test suite against it and make sure that the agent is doing what it's supposed to be doing. With finance and legal, I think you can do the same things, but the cost of failure is much higher, right? Like, so I think if we are doing SOX compliance or we are getting earnings ready and we have an agent that his job is to like get earnings ready, and I know this because we have earnings next week, we cannot take a mistake. Like I think like the scrutiny of that agent like is going to be tremendous, and so I think the auditability of the decision making that the agent is doing, the kind of data sources that the agent has access to, the verifiability of the output, all move up to a really high bar, and yeah, I mean I think these are one of we're doing this right now. Like these are one of the last flows to get automated, right? Like I think like because so much of the company's existence depends on its ability to get finances right, to make sure that its legal surface area is like the right appropriate legal surface area. And this is also true in other functions in like companies like Circle, like compliance. We don't want to get hauled in by regulators just because like our agent made a mistake. They're going to hold us responsible, not the agent, right? So.
Makes sense. Thank you,
Can
Nikhil.
I jump on?
Please, please.
One very important point. So I fully agree with Nikhil. There's a concept called verifier's law. So what that concept tells you is that tasks that are easy to verify, those are going to be ripe for agentic processes. So imagine Sudoku. So Sudoku, the puzzle, it's hard to do, but very easy to verify, right? So anything that's easy to verify, and coding is one of those things where you do have QA and things like that where you can test it very quickly. But then things that are hard to verify will be harder to solve and will have a longer lead time. Self-driving, same thing. It's very hard to fully verify that was the car or the vehicle doing the right thing at the right time. Same thing in banking. When we have, for example, someone come in and submit for a credit card application or a loan application, some cases we don't have a lot of data. So if we make an incorrect decision based on the information we have, and let's just say the person defaults, it may be 5 years from when they default. So the decision to give them credit was today, the verification is 5 years down the road. Becomes very hard. And so we do look at the verification part of it as, hey, which are the tasks that are really ripe for agents that will surpass human, call it, probability of being correct all the time, and those would be the ones that we would always start with.
Makes sense. And I assume that applies for both in-house agents that you would build as well as third-party agents that you would buy, or do you treat those any differently, whether they're internally sourced or externally sourced?
I think there's going to be hybrid. The big thing is that, as I sort of mentioned in my talk as well, the models, the intelligence is largely going to be the same. So we understand that. But then there's things that, for example, Wells Fargo will have in its IP and its data that others will not. And so there will be an advantage of having, call it, homegrown agents that are doing certain things. At the same time, the models and both the, call it, off-the-shelf agents are becoming so powerful right out of the box that it just doesn't make sense to not use them. I think the big thing will be the economics of them. As soon as they start coming down, they're going to be more pervasive. Another big thing that we're looking at is how would the agents connect to each other? Because again, I gave the example of a home mortgage process. It is a very large, very complex, roughly 1,100 step process that we have in the bank. It will not be one agent. It's not going to be a collection of agents that's just homegrown. It'll be a combination of many things. And it's not going to be that this agent does a job really well, but the other one doesn't, because they need to talk and connect to each other, especially when the systems are long running. You give a prompt, you get a response back, that's easy. That you'll be right. But when you want something done over multiple hours or days or weeks, the context, that's where it starts getting a little bit shady.
Yeah, and is there an approach, or do you know, or is it maybe this is an opportunity for entrepreneurs for the things that take longer, that are harder to verify? Any techniques people are using, or is that an opportunity for like, hey, we made a decision today, but it had an impact 5 years later, but you don't have that data, or you haven't started to collect that data?
I would say if there's entrepreneurs in the room, agentic harness, for example, and the concept sounds so simple, right? It's a harness that holds everything together and sits on top of the agent, but it is incredibly hard to do. Again, especially for long-running processes. So that's something that we're actively looking at. And the stuff that I'm talking about are industry-specific problems. These are not just Wells Fargo problems. These are industry-specific problems. So anyone who's focused on, for example, making the agent-to-agent work, there's a lot of protocols out there. A2A is a great one. A lot of organizations also are building on top of standard SDKs. So that typically is not the issue. The issue is optimizing which data to grab for what task. How would, for example, a ServiceNow agent collaborate with a Salesforce agent, collaborate with a homegrown agent, share the right context and the right information? Very difficult to do. So that is a big, big opportunity.
Awesome. And Nikhil, when you think about agents in your past lines of work or at Circle, how do you measure reliability? What are the metrics that you look at, the KPIs, and how do you determine when an agent is good enough to put into production, or is that variable based on the use case?
I mean, most definitely varies by use case. There was a discussion, I think I attended this talk today morning. It talked about evals and how evals are really hard. The speaker made this point that across organizations, like each organization is idiosyncratic on like evals. I would say within organizations, each team is idiosyncratic about like evals. And so like what to measure, how to measure, like what is good, like needs to be defined process by process by process. And so like we are just standing up the frameworks for scalable evals. And then evals break for all kinds of reasons, right? Like there can be like model drift, there can be data issues, there can be all manners of things that'll break how an agent is performing. And so I would say like for the places that we have implemented, we have tried to lock down both the model, the harness, and like the amount of variables that are going into it outside of the input that is coming in. And we're looking at like we do evals. We also do some of this where we do the agent kind of sits with the human. I think it's called some people call it shadowing, and we observe like how the human's going to do it, and we observe what the agent's going to do it, and that's another kind of eval if you want to call it that. But we do it differently, so you're simultaneously on the job, like, and compliance analyst gets an inbound, like they're making a decision, they're looking at what the agent is doing and looking at and then we sort of like evaluate that, and we sort of run it in a reinforcement learning loop. So that's sort of like how we're measuring it. The other KPIs we are trying to figure out is like how much of like token spend equates to like what kind of automation we can achieve, and I think our sort of metrics are really fuzzy there. I think it's like right now we're not focused on like trying to save money on the tokens. We're like letting people use the tokens and saying, okay, well, how much sort of productivity can you achieve? And that productivity often shows up as like either per human more output. That's typically how we're measuring things. Or like, you know, in some places it shows up as revenue. Like those places are small still. Or there's some other cost saving that is obvious, or we're able to substitute that labor that was doing X to do Y. That's another way like KPIs show up. So It's all of the above. Like, but yeah, it is. There's no rule of thumb in saying like, well, this is how you do KPIs or evals.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Faraz, when you've talked about the importance of the harness layer, but when you think about building new agents, there's, you can look at the model, you can pick the model, you can optimize the model, you can build the harness, you can look at the workflow, integrate with the workflow in different ways, provide different context, memory. I guess those are all part of the harness. But when you think about like that engineering effort, how do you weight the effort against those different elements when you're trying to build an agent?
Yeah, no, that's where I spent a lot of time because think of a traditional product development lifecycle. You would have an idea. That idea, again, would go back and forth into a lot of iterations, typically on a Word doc or PowerPoint. And then you would engage engineering to build a Figma, build some type of a prototype. And then it would get into that sort of development lifecycle where, again, architectural patterns would come in. You'd look at vulnerabilities and risk assessment and things like that. So again, the traditional development lifecycle is very archaic, very human-driven, very much call it a sequential process. In the world of agentic, I mean, we see two paths. One is the technical paths of it, which, as you mentioned, Matt, there's like memory, the infrastructure. Are we going to deploy it on our cloud or work public cloud or things like that? So you have all these technical choices. But a really key thing are the business choices. Because what I tend to see, and again, this is maybe another area of opportunity for the entrepreneurial folks. Today, there's only a handful of companies that are building frontier intelligence, literally a handful of companies. But there's going to be a slew of companies that will be building, call it the engine to make it work in enterprises. Because enterprises have many things. They need security, they need governance, they need compliance. Plus also, again, going back to the home mortgage, I don't know why I'm caught up on the home mortgage example today, but generally the leaders would say, okay, we have this large process. Can you use AI and make it simpler, faster, better, more automated? And that is typically the wrong approach. The approach would be, what is the art of possible using AI? And can we reimagine this whole experience and then, again, find a way to go from your current process to that? And I see that as a gap in the enterprise. And I was actually, Nikhil and I were talking in the green room. When you talk to developers or product managers, everyone individually claims that they are maybe 30% more efficient, right? They're writing code faster than ever before. But for some cases, you would not see that translate into workflows. So generally it would, or it should, but it doesn't always. So I think that's where the gap is. The gap is process engineering, understanding the domain-specific data, understanding the use cases, and then making sure you can work backwards into what would be the right architecture. Because the architecture, I think, is going to start becoming the easier factor in all of this.
Yeah, sounds like it's, as most problems, not just technology, but people and process as well, which can be challenging. I guess next question would be more around when you think about the organizational element and having agents in the organization, how do you see that? And you touched on this somewhat, but curious what you both think about, what does team composition look like? How do you think about the ratio of employees to agents to get a certain job done? How does that impact how you think about building your organizations or evolving your organizations going forward? I've seen some companies that have adopted some agentic technologies and not necessarily gotten the benefits versus companies that have started with a clean sheet of paper and adopted those technologies because of the legacy that they have and from a organizational perspective, not being able to take advantage of that. So maybe Nikhil, maybe you first to hear how you guys at Circle think about org design with agents as a new employee or a new member of a team.
So we're just rolling out the ability for employees to self-publish agents. So we're in the process of rolling out like an agent gateway. So like what all the agents are, and you can like talk to them. Like you can find them in Slack and connect with them. Right now, I don't foresee a future in which um, the sort of like point person on a project is not a human, right? Like it is going to be a human. Like I'm not gonna like a human can then go and like sort of like invoke from one of the many agents we have inside this company, query our agent gateway, figure out like, hey, what are all the agents available inside the company? Like what finance agent do we have? What marketing agent do we have? And compose them into like some kind of solution. I don't think about it as an org design question because like I don't tell the people working for me how many Google Docs they can open or how many Google presentations they can open. They can do whatever they want, right? Like they are creating an outcome for us. So like being able to self-publish, being able to sort of access like data so that you can self-publish and being able to have like all the right ACLs so you can self-publish and having all the agent communication figured out. That is what I'm focused on. Like the org design is like, I don't care. Like I really think like if you have an agent that can do something, then I'm sure you can do something else for me.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it'll work itself out. You'll just evolve based on
It'll work itself out. I do think organizations will be more productive, which is I think everybody's experience. Maybe they will reorganize because like the functional sort of function A versus function B is like now when the lines are blurrier. And so I do think like the organizational impact for us is much more about like, well, how do we compose our teams and like, who are the people? Like, do the product managers do more product marketing? Do the product marketing do more like, brand? Like, do BD do more product? Like, there's all kinds of questions like on sales calls, like who's showing up on the sales calls? You don't need a product person showing up. Maybe our agent shows up on the sales calls and gets notes. So there's all kinds of efficiencies like this that are like being figured out. But like, yeah, in terms of org design, like old school McKinsey stuff, like we're not thinking about it.
Makes sense.
You'll go do what you need to do.
Makes sense. And for us, in your role and in your past, when you think about adopting agents at scale, what do you think are the biggest challenges in organizations to adopting them at scale?
I think apart from the technological challenges, I think there's a very interesting concept that we're starting to look at, which is the fact that there are not going to be any individual contributors. So I don't know how many people in the room are ICs for the ones that are working, but typically, I mean, out of our bank of 200,000 employees, largely they're individual contributors. But what does that mean? That means the ICs now will be manager of agents. And so people that are individual contributors today, they're typically not used to delegating work. They're typically used to owning it end to end. They're fully responsible. But now at this point, if you, let's just say, get a body of work and you may be using ChatGPT or Claude or any of the model, then again, you still own the work, but you're delegating it. And that is going to be the dominant way of working moving forwards. And so one thing that we're doing right now is sort of emphasize how everyone is going to be a manager. And just like you give feedback to humans, you need to give feedbacks and have mechanisms to give feedbacks to your agents, to have a way to grow your agents and get more out of them. And that's just very new because it is something that the playbooks really don't exist. You're not used to a world of no ICs and all managers. So I just thought that was a very interesting snippet that, again, we're working with our HR team on how do we roll that out.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And maybe one more question for both of you, then we'll go to sort of a final question. But there's been all this discussion in the news the last maybe 3-4 weeks around intelligence is becoming democratized. The models are becoming, even the open source models are getting closer and closer to frontier. But you as an org that's using this technology need to think about where is your moat over time. How do you continue to own the things that differentiate you from your competitors? So maybe talk about how that impacts how you think about building product at Circle, Nikhil, and for you, Faraz, at Wells Fargo.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're much smaller than Wells Fargo, I think.
But you have aspirations.
Yeah, we have aspirations. I think they're 2 orders of magnitude, at least in the engineering organization, bigger than us. Look, I think of this as there's this I mean, there's always a race on, right? Like you're in a race with somebody, and now suddenly you can wear a jetpack if you can master the jetpack, and you can take a lead over the rest of the competition. They'll catch up. Like they will wear their jetpack, and they will get there to get there as well. So first, I want to make sure that I put my jetpack on before, and I get my organization to put on the jetpack before everybody else does. So like we're very focused on that. So like, how do we do that? And second, um, uh, you're right. Like a lot of stuff will get commoditized. I think like software-only businesses, like I think this is broad consensus around this. They will be hard to defend. So we do have some hard things though. Like we are a company of networks, right? Like USDC is our core product. We think about it as a stablecoin network. We have a payments network on top of that, which is we call the Circle Payments Network, and then we're building a new blockchain, which is called ARC, which is also a network because you need validators and you need participants who are like aligning incentives to participate in that blockchain. So we believe like these network businesses are superior to software businesses, and software is an enabler of these network businesses. And how can we sort of like utilize the software to build these software-enabled networks, like essentially, which then also have like a component that is really difficult, like like for some of our blockchain stuff, it's hard computational stuff. For issuing a stablecoin, it's complicated. You are chartered by the OCC, and you have to submit to the exams, and you have to do all. So like I almost think about it as the hard physics of the business, and then there's everything else. And the hard physics of the business, we're very focused on making sure that we do a really good job and getting into more businesses that are adjacencies that are also hard physics, and then using this like accelerant that we have on the top.
Awesome. Yeah. Makes sense.
So I think there's going to be some amazing changes that we will see for sure in the banking industry. Yeah. And many of those things are not technological challenges, by the way. Like 24/7 trading, why does the trading end at 4 p.m. Eastern? Why doesn't it continue going on? And the answer largely is not technological. It is not a big issue to technologically enable that. It is that the regulators want to make sure that the movement of money is regulated, they're protecting the consumers, and there's all these guardrails around that. So you want to control those guardrails. Just like self-driving is moving at an incredibly fast pace, especially living here in the Bay Area, we witness it probably more than others. And same thing, why is money not, let's just say, instantly available anywhere in the world at a click of a button? So a lot of these, there's good technological solutions, but it's more to, hey, yes, I can make the money available. What if the other bank is taking 2 days to close the book? Who's paying for that delta of 2 days, and what happens when the money doesn't reach? So it's all those other things. So I think there's the regulatory part of it, which has to catch up. So we're going to see some new use cases as soon as we see better regulation catch up. And I think Nikhil said it really well, that the software side of it is going to make us do the hardware side of the business really well. And when I say hardware, I don't mean GPUs. I know it's an Agentic AI conference. But we still have 4,000 branches. We still believe that there's a value in human connection, in having someone come in and talk to a bank advisor in Spanish because they only speak Spanish, and build a plan for their financial education. So we believe that those things are not going to go away. It's just that how they are delivered and consumed is going to dramatically change. And over the course of time, I honestly think that largely we are dominated by LLMs today. That's the talk of the town. Eventually it'll be small language models, it'll be fine-tuned models, because that will become as easy as a click of a button. So today it's all about token cost and LLMs. Eventually it'll be more about vertical specialized AI. And so we're going to see a lot of new use cases come from that.
Okay, awesome. Final question, just to look ahead. Looking ahead 5 years, what workflow in your domain will be automatable that today you wouldn't imagine would be automatable for both of you?
You can go.
Oh, that's a tough one. The amount of time today we spend on, for example, things like underwriting, because underwriting is the core for any banks. Doesn't matter if you're doing income verification, home loan verification, and it's a very archaic process. People, bring in all sorts of documentation. Like you may send a utility bill that you took a picture at a wrong angle with the light hitting it, and so someone has to send it back. Very complex, multimodal challenge. I think that's just going to become table stakes with these over the next couple of years. And it's a compute challenge as well as the economics are just not there. So I think long term that'll be pretty big. I do think eventually, by the way, today, as I mentioned, LLMs are dominant. Eventually it'll be small language models and fine-tuned models. And then quantum, once that compute is available, will give an extra adrenaline into that. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm AGI build, so I believe we will be looking at AGI through our bedroom windows. And so at that point, like, who am I to say like what is not solvable? I will say one thing. It may be a data center full of geniuses, but like the humans are Byzantine, they are idiosyncratic, like they are very hard to coordinate. So it may be very lonely for those data center full of geniuses while the rest of us try to coordinate and figure this out. So like, so there is that. Like we have the best, we have really good models, but I am surprised by how much effort it takes just to convince people to do things, even when those things are objectively good for them. And so, I mean, I don't know if anybody has a parent who you have tried to get them to eat their medicine. It is objectively good for them to eat their medicine. They will refuse, or children for that matter. Human society is not ready, like, to just take it from like these data center full of geniuses. That is my conclusion. Like, I want those people, those data centers around, and I'm very glad that they're here. But we have a lot of problems to solve between now and this future that we're imagining.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Please help me thank Nikhil and Faraz.
Thank you.